starting at the beginning, what is a makerspace? So the title of this webinar was Makerspaces for Inventors and Innovators. So before we get into why a makerspace, we need to know what it is. And a makerspace, what it is and what it isn't. So it isn't an educational lab. It isn't a startup incubator. It isn't a fab lab or a tech shop. It's a combination of different things. So where these three things are, you generally can consider that a makerspace. So one is ideas, two are tools, and three is a community. So if you only have two of those things, you don't actually have a makerspace. If you have ideas and tools and you work by yourself, then you've got a workshop. And that's great. Workshops are fun. But what you'll find is you probably run out of ideas because you don't have anyone else to inspire you, and you also aren't necessarily having a big impact. So it's a great personal thing to do, to have a workshop. Many of us dream having our own workshops, but it isn't a makerspace. So if you want a makerspace, then you need community. Okay, if you have a community and you have ideas, but you don't have any tools, then what you have is possibly a co-working space. Maybe it's a think tank or a club or I don't know, something else. It's not a makerspace. So in the same way, if you have a big community, lots of ideas, and one tool, it's probably less like a makerspace than what an actual makerspace is. So you kind of need all three of those things in equal measure. Community is as important as tools, and that is as important as ideas. Without ideas, a community who has tools is more a co-op. It's just people come in and borrow tools and go and use the tools to do the same old work. Nothing really changes. So that's what a makerspace is. Makerspaces are a place where you can be inspired, where you can learn, where you can make things, and where you can share the things that you make, as well as the techniques on how you make them. So that becomes a virtuous cycle, and that's what we think about often at the makerspace, is that life cycle of inspire, learn, make, share. And where are you in that journey? And in different technologies, you can be in different parts of that journey. So we don't expect everyone to be able to share everything. We don't expect everyone to be able to inspire everyone. We don't expect everyone to be able to learn something they already know. So for any person who's an expert in a certain area, they're probably able to make things in that area. They're able to share technology and inspire others, but they may not be able to learn anything new because they're an expert in that area. And so they're probably a novice in another area. And that's one of the ideas of a makerspace and of building a vibrant community, is to keep people learning new things. And it's so to keep starting that cycle. Don't let people get in a comfort zone where they just stick to the one thing that they know. You want to try and encourage people to get out of their comfort zones and try new things. And that is part of the innovation culture that you want to build in a space where you're wanting people to innovate and invent new things and come up with solutions. So if people never try things, then they clearly will not end up innovating, and things will get very stale. So the first and most important thing is the community. The second thing is the tools, which is quite simple, really. It's a lot more formulaic and easy to get your head around. And the third thing is the ideas. And so, or the culture of the community. So I just wanted to cover a few success stories of makerspaces, and I found this website that has a nice list here. So these are all started at Tech Shop. So Square is the most successful company ever to start at a makerspace. If you Google Square, the company, they started in 2009 by Jack Dorsey. Their revenue for last year was $3.3 billion US. Pretty successful company. and they built their prototype in a tech shop. Interesting thing here, side notes. So tech shop liquidated in 2017. They had 7 locations. They liquidated, they closed down with 1 month's notice. They told their staff, sorry, we can't afford to hire you anymore, and they shut their doors. I think 2 of the makerspaces, 2 of the tech shops continued to work independently, like they carried on in some other form. 5 of them closed down. They were big beneficiaries of President Obama's Nation of Makers strategy, where he was trying to encourage local manufacturing. And so they had a lot of government support, and they didn't have a sustainable model. So with the change of political support, they weren't able to continue in the way that they had started. But the question also remains, like, if Square started at Tech Shop and made so much money, why wouldn't Square be funding Tech Shop? Because it'll be a small percentage of their profit. And that's kind of what you need to think about if you're building a makerspace, is how do you get your community to partner with you so that you have a share in their success, to make a makerspace sustainable. So one thing that's very clear to me is that makerspaces are not sustainable. They are not able to pay the costs of the value that they create. That doesn't mean they shouldn't exist. It just means that you need to understand that if you want to start a makerspace, if you want to build one, you have to build a mechanism to create revenue outside of the makerspace. So you need to think about how to hybridize your income, your revenue. So if you think about the cost of running a space and the value that a makerspace can benefit communities and local communities, and also by solving huge problems they can benefit globally, who's going to pay for that benefit? And you have to think about that as you build this community. And what you'll find is if you are running the thing, if you're starting it up, you're going to put all of your own money into it. And this is it's a famous story. It's happened many times. People have this idea, they want to build a cool workshop. They see, this idea that you want to get lots of people in the space, and you want to get lots of cool, fun tools, and you just find that after a year or 2, you just run out of funds and you have to close the doors. So,
when your brothers, you always ask for help. Someone will have you never know.
How do we mute people? That's the question. So I'm going to go back here. Okay, everyone's muted. I'm going to go back to the screen share. Share. Okay. So, we talked about Square and we talked about sustainability. So, golden rule is that makerspaces are not sustainable. Okay, so it sounds like bad news. I don't know if that sounds like bad news to anyone else, but it's better to know that they're not sustainable when you start than to find that out 3 years down the line when you've poured your heart and soul into something. So if you start knowing that they're not sustainable, then you can build around that and realize that that's the cost of having a makerspace, of running a makerspace, of being part of a makerspace, is that it will never make you money. And if you start with that deal and you're happy with that deal, then possibly you can succeed. No guarantee that you will succeed, but at least you forewarned is forearmed. So if you know makerspace is not sustainable, then you've got to figure out how to create other sources of revenue. I'm just going to go through the list again. So we got to Square, the most successful business I believe that's ever started at a makerspace. Dodo Case, also done really well. They make iPad cases. They've sold hundreds of thousands of iPad cases, premium products. They made millions of rand. They started in a makerspace. Then there's some social impact projects like Embrace Infant Warmer, which is developed for developing countries. as a way to reduce infant mortality, a low-cost alternative to an incubator for babies. And this is a product that the founders are making a decent living. They're obviously making, having a great impact on the world. So their impact is less about billions of dollars and more about life. You can't always measure everything in rand. So if we go to the next one, there are some motorcycles, premium motorcycles, liquid cooling system, and then some crafty businesses. So those are typical of like just normal users who can make little crafty businesses out of a makerspace. Okay, so that was some of the success stories of makerspaces, and keep that in balance with the golden rule, which is makerspaces are not sustainable. They are, however, a fundamental part of the smart city design. So smart cities are something that every city wants to be a smart city, and so how do cities partner with innovators, and how do you communicate the value of a makerspace to your city so that they can support you and help to fund your makerspace? So that's one of the things you have to work out, and you do that through partnership. So the second golden rule. So the first golden rule is makerspaces are not sustainable. Second golden rule is they can take time to build. Okay, that's because you can't just buy tools and drop them in a room and say you've got a makerspace. You need that community, and communities aren't built overnight. So let's talk a little bit about how to build a makerspace. We've talked about the success stories. We've talked about why should we build makerspaces. Let me just go a little bit more into why we should. So you saw some of the success stories. I think the opportunity is even more in developing countries, because the traditional like university model that exists overseas in first world countries isn't available necessarily to us. The resources and the financial availability of resources, equipment, third-party manufacturing, all of that stuff's not as available to developing countries. So makerspaces are even more important in a developing country because they become one of the only places that like innovation can happen, like innovation that can have a global impact. Obviously, local innovation where somebody figures out a way to fix something using wire and whatever is great, and especially if they can create a revenue and a business out of it, and that is good. But we're looking and hoping to have a global impact. So in order to have a global impact, we need to think about the big picture. And makerspaces are key to that because they provide access to those tools and ideas. So just talking about tools, tools and community go hand in hand. So there is a cautionary tale of Fab Lab South Africa. Fab Labs are a very successful MIT designed program which link makerspaces in a certain format with communities and universities around the world. They failed in South Africa because although the Department of Trade and Industry was very had good foresight in identifying it as an opportunity for Africa, they weren't rolled out in a community-focused way. So they weren't adopted by the community, and so they ended up just being white elephants that just cost a lot of money to maintain. And again, it's the whole thing of having a whole lot of tools. A room full of tools is not a makerspace. If you don't have a community who's engaging with the tools and who's bringing new ideas and fresh ideas, and you don't have balance between those three things, then you don't have a makerspace. You don't have something that can continue and can be vibrant and can have an impact. So what we want are makerspaces that have a balance between the tools that they provide, the community that they serve, and the ideas that are going to, or the problems they're going to solve through the good ideas that they have. So you have to localize a makerspace. You have to look at the area that you're operating in, the community that you're trying to serve, and then decide which tools best suit that community. And the other thing is always to, okay, so now we're going into how. So starting with tools. Which tools do we need to buy? So that's the number one question we get from people who've heard about makerspaces, and mainly probably for their school or somewhere. I told you that makerspace is not an edu lab. It's not an educational space. It's not. You don't go to a makerspace to learn something. You go there to make something. It's a learning space if you go there to learn. It's a makerspace if you go there to make. So you can't get a whole lot of children around watching a teacher make something and say we've got a makerspace, because you're kidding yourself. You can get children in making things and innovating, and then you could have a makerspace in the same room. So how do you get your tools that you need? So you start off with what you have. So you donate your own tools. You ask for donations from friends and family and institutions, anyone you know. You buy secondhand tools wherever you can. So a good rule of thumb is buy the cheap tools and buy secondhand tools until they break. If they break, it's a signal that you've used them enough to justify buying a decent tool. So instead of going to Builders Express or whatever, wherever you are in the world, and you've got this fantastic hyper store of tools, and going to the most expensive tool and buying the full range, which realistically you probably can't afford. And even if you can, rule number one says you need to conserve your capital, so you need to be wise with where you spend your money. You buy all the best tools, you go home, you put them in your makerspace, and they just sit there and gather dust. No one uses them. And you find that the one tool that you use is the angle grinder, and that one, the rest of the tools don't get used. So rather buy cheap tools, because when they break, you're then able to say, okay, that tool was used enough that it broke, so let's replace it. You also won't feel bad about it breaking, because you almost want it to break because it's a bad tool. And then you might also find secondhand tools which have fantastic value because they last and they just don't break. So that would be the method that I would advise. And then the third thing is when we talk about tools and equipment, the equipment that you're going to buy, which is obviously going to cost you a lot of money, you need to think about equipment that's going to be able to give you a return on investment. So if you go buy a water jet cutter, they can cost upwards of R1 million, quite a lot more actually. And their maintenance costs are staggering. Like they cost thousands and thousands of rand a month to maintain because of the abrasiveness and the way that water jet cutters are. So I wouldn't suggest you go and buy a water jet cutter as your first tool, because how are you going to commercialize that tool? Now, if you happen to have a water jet cutter, or if you happen to know a person who's got a secondhand water jet cutter, or he has a business that does water jet cutting, and they say to you, hey, listen, we're upgrading our machine, we're selling this one for like a fraction of what it's worth. You wanting to do this maker thing, do you want to buy it, or we want to donate it to you, whatever? Then, of course, you put your thinking hat on and say, okay, well, here's an opportunity. Maybe we should take it. But you've always got to think to yourself, how are we going to commercialize this thing? If we're going to pay anything for it, how's this thing going to produce value? Whether that value is community building, so maybe the water jet cutter becomes an attraction, everyone comes and they want to watch it cut all day long, that could be a benefit. But more often than not, the way that we measure value in our kind of global culture is through money. That's the best. That's why they call it currency, because you use it as a measure of value. So if you don't want to pay for something, it shows that you don't value that thing. If you want to pay for something, it shows you do value that thing. Now, there's certain things you can't pay for because paying for them would undermine what they are. So you can't pay for love, because then the seller of love wouldn't be giving you true love. So, but understand, if you could put money to it, if you ask someone who was super wealthy, if you didn't have anyone who loved them, how much would you pay to be loved? They would probably give up everything they have to be loved. So understand that there is, in most cases, is the best measure of value. So you look at a tool, you say, how much is it going to cost and how much can it make? And then look at tools that are scalable, so digital manufacturing tools, digital production tools that you can set up and that can run and run and run. that have low servicing costs, and so you can get a good return on the money that you spend on those tools. And these are all little nuggets that are going to help you collectively make your makerspace close to sustainable as possible. So secondhand, lease tools, borrow tools. If people want to give you tools, take the tools, put them on an auction or sell them or hack them apart or whatever. And so you need space. You need an area to put this equipment. So we're assuming here, when you're building a makerspace, that you have a space. If your space is one room big, you can't have a water jet cutter. Okay. You might only be able to have 2 3D printers and some soldering irons, and you can focus more on electronics. So again, coming back to your community and your resources, tailor make the makerspace to what you have available to you. Now, if you win the lottery and you get R1 million or $1 million donated to you or whatever, you're lucky enough to be in that situation, which would be phenomenal. And let's say you went out on a shopping spree and you just bought all the equipment that you ever dreamed of, and you had this lovely shiny equipment sitting on your floor. What you'd soon find is that there would be no one to use the equipment because you haven't built a community. So you don't have a makerspace. You've got a room full of equipment. So now you've got to start servicing that equipment, paying for that equipment, paying the rent on that equipment, and controlling that equipment. So you suddenly get 1 or 2 people coming in and wanting to use, and you say, oh, great, these guys they want to come use the equipment. Great, I'm building a makerspace. And they break the equipment, or they don't know how to use it, or they hurt themselves because you haven't created a sustainable or a good operating system. So the equipment and the tools go hand in hand. So whatever tools you have and whatever tools you aim for should suit and serve your community. If your community is very high tech, they're very into wearable technology and software, then you're probably not going to need welding equipment and a robotic welder. But what you might want is a pick and place machine or something that can make PCBs and smaller scale things for electronics. And so start with the sort of primary things that your community sees benefit in. And the go-to tool, if you're asking now specific tools, that universally is probably the most widely used maker tool is the laser cutter. Mark Hatch, who used to run Tech Shop, called it the gateway drug to making. It's very easy to learn. We teach people in 1 hour how to use a laser cutter. And then it's easy to maintain. It's relatively low cost. It's probably going to cost in the region of about from $3,000 to $5,000, or from 50,000, 60,000 Rand to 100,000 Rand. We would always suggest you go for a slightly bigger machine because it gives you a bigger work area that you can then commercialize again. And then build businesses around that. So get people who can make crafts, price the use of that machine per hour, so that you can get your community to use the machine and to help you. So you're buying tools that are going to serve your community, and you're building a community that's going to look after your tools. So those things go hand in hand. So the community that you're working with, if they are all street welders, that's primarily your target market, or people that you found that you've just built this community with. Then don't go and buy sort of high-tech, high-end, metal 3D printers, because they're not necessarily going to get benefit out of that. Where they are going to get benefit out of a MIG welder or certain other equipment that they're able to use. And then the next equipment should be something that sort of extends their capability. So they find they want to do a little bit of woodworking because they're building all these steel frames. They want to put some wood on it. Then we add that on. Okay. So in terms of tools, it's not a question of just saying, here's a list of tools. Common tools would be digital manufacturing tools, because they are scalable. They are able to access. You can actually send your files from anywhere in the world. And they can complement and help you to design, pretty much anything. So things like laser cutters, 3D printers, CNC machines, milling machines, and CNC cutting machines. Other things like large format print machines for advertising and signage, vinyl cutting machines, acrylic benders, And then you work into your more metalworking area, where you're going to have things to suit welding, bending of metal. That's going to cost a lot more money, and it's going to be a lot more dangerous and have a lot more requirements in terms of health and safety. So you need to, obviously, only if you can afford that. Woodworking also is slightly more dangerous, so you need to have more control and safety around your woodworking area. Table saw is a very useful tool, and you can make a lot of things using wood. So depending on the scale, again. We also look at composites, so having a composites lab, a spray booth, where you can finish parts. Composites are another technology that's very, very useful and valuable. It's a bit of a niche, but it's low cost, so it's something to look at setting up. And then having access to materials for your community. So if the community arrives and they're all excited to use this equipment that you've now purchased, somehow you've borrowed, they're willing to pay for some use of it, but there's no material, then they're stuck. Then they've got to go and find material somewhere, and they might pay too much, or use the wrong material, bring the wrong material, break your machines. So you want to manage that whole usage of the equipment. And you want to do it in a way that is self-managing, because makerspaces, rule number one, are not sustainable. They're not going to make money. You can't afford to pay someone to manage the space. You can't afford a big overhead. So what you have to do is you have to make your community manage itself. So you have to be clever about your booking, your resource allocation, about the rules of your membership or your community engagements. So for us, we always look at the values of the community. And that's where you should start. So we started through doing events. So we had maker events. We would have a 3-hour event. We'd invite people to come. And we did those events in a certain format, and we charged for them from the beginning. We always have charged for events. So that people who started with us were never surprised when we charged for use of machines, because the money's got to come from somewhere. But some people expect things for free. So they think that everything should be free. And if you tell them they have to start paying, but you've been giving them something free, they get very upset. And that can derail your whole community. So build your values in up front. Think very carefully about the sort of values that you are trying to establish. At this point, I'd say look at human-centered design. So design this space that you want to build around human beings. Ask yourself, how do human beings experience the world? They experience the world in 5 senses: through sight, through sound, through touch, through taste, and through smell. So try to cater for every single one of those senses to make the space a good place to be. So if you come to a makerspace and it smells like a dying rat, which we had the other day on our roof, it's not a pleasant place to work. So you don't want to be there. And so it's going to affect your community. They're not going to want to come back. If you have a comfortable place to sit and work, if you have beautiful surroundings, and you do your best to make it interesting and creative and inspirational, if you have nice music in the background, if you have nice smells in the background like coffee and vanilla and plants, and if you have nice tastes like cappuccinos and maybe craft beer or cupcakes or whatever it is that you want to provide your community, then you'll generally find you start to build a community, because human beings are expecting and that's the way they experience the world. So that, again, is one of the reasons why that Fab Lab project wasn't particularly successful, because I don't believe they planned it around a human being coming and interacting in that space. People often do this. They believe that because they are doing something good, that everyone should just accept it and be grateful for it the way that it is. So if I'm giving you a free internet cafe, then if my computer's slow, well, it's too bad. You should be happy and grateful that I'm giving you free internet. But that's not the way human beings are wired. We aren't grateful for something that doesn't work properly. Even if it's free, I'd rather pay for something that works than to get something free that doesn't work. So bear that in mind. Okay. So try to build a space that's encouraging for human beings, the way that it flows, the way that you engage people when they arrive. If you're not friendly to them, if no one greets them and explains and asks them if they've got any questions, then they're not going to want to come back. So what we've figured out is that your community has to manage your community, because you can't afford to pay someone to do that for you, and you can't outsource it. And anyway, a community does a far better job of managing a community than an individual does. So we empower our community through basic rules and basic values. For us, they're good values. You can use them, copy them if you want. We talked about inspire, learn, make, share. So we tell everyone that's our expectation of you. If you come here, you may not be ready to inspire anyone, but at some point you better be willing to inspire someone, because that's what we're aiming for. If you're joining us on this journey, we're expecting you to learn, to make, to share, and to inspire. If you're just here as a observer, you're not really part of us. The second thing is leave a place better than you found it. So try to make the world better than it is now. Try to make the makerspace better than it was when you arrived, even if it means just cleaning up after yourself and after the person next to you, because if you leave it to everyone just to wash their own dishes, you end up with a sink full of dishes and no one takes ownership. But if you say to everyone, look, everybody should give a little bit more than they take. So if you get any value out of the space, just make sure that you're giving more back than you take. So if you get, if you pay 100 Rand to use something, then you should be getting 100 Rand of value. But likely you're getting more than 100 Rand of value. So find out how else you can pay for that. How else you can pay back for the benefit that you're getting. So building a community, values are important. The third value we said, inspire, learn, make, share, teach. The third one is to have respect. Okay, so we believe that people should have respect for each other, they should have respect for the environment, and they should have respect for the equipment. So if you want to come and join our community, you have to demonstrate respect for those three things. If you're not willing to demonstrate respect for those three things, then you're not invited anymore. Then you are going to be excluded. So we will discriminate on the basis of values only, not on the basis of any other criteria, not anything you look like or the way you talk or anything, but the way you act. Okay, so respect people. That means everybody respects everybody. It means if you have a strong opinion and you're going to upset someone else, then rather don't share that opinion, because you're not respecting them by standing up on a soapbox and telling everyone what you think. If you are going to look at somebody's work and you're going to be critical, like without helping them, you're just being unhelpful and disrespectful. Not on. Respect people. Second thing is respect the environment. Like when you're working, think about the cost on the environment. A plastic straw costs 1 cent, cash-wise. But the cost on the environment is far more expensive, and it hasn't been catered for. So if you've got to go and collect all the straws that have ever been made that are floating around the ocean, it would be a multi-billion dollar exercise. So that hasn't been factored into the price of the 1 cent straw, which is the problem. So often there's things that are cheap that you're just going to use or do or cut or make that are going to have a negative impact on the environment. So think about that. Think about the local environment, like your actual space. So doing things that are not respecting the local environment, like leaving a big mess or coming to the makerspace without having showered for 2 weeks. You're not respecting the local environment. And then think about the global environment as well, what you use and what you make, how's it impacting and benefiting the environment. There's a trade-off between making things and innovating and the cost on the environment. You have to weigh that up, just be cognizant of it. And so respect people, respect the environment, and respect equipment. So the equipment has to cost money. It's one of the key parts of value offerings of a makerspace. So you have to respect it. Use it in the way that you have been taught to use it. Don't use it unless you've been taught. If you're not sure about something, just stop and ask. There'll always be someone to help you and explain to you. If you break something, explain. Put your hand up. Say, hey, I broke this thing. And at least be willing to admit it, even if you're not willing to pay for the repairs. Because you can't have a community where you come and you find things are broken, 2, 3, 5 days later when you need the tool, it's broken. And because eventually the community will get fed up with that and they'll say, no, stuff this. I'm just going to go make a makerspace in my own garage, because every time I come here, I just get frustrated. So it's important on behalf of the majority of the community and the people who want to be part of that community that you look after that community. And for us, the end game is to create a platform for innovation and invention that can improve the world. So leave the world better than you found it, as I said, one of our values. we want to encourage a community that is always looking to improve and add and benefit. So people come to us and they say, I've got this idea, but it's top secret. I can't tell you. You need to sign an NDA. We say, well, we're not interested. It's not why we're here. We're here to serve people who are willing to share their ideas or willing to partner with other people. They're not scared that someone's going to steal their idea and going to work in a very limited mindset. We're looking at an infinite mindset. We're saying, look, there's an infinite amount of ideas out there. So if you steal my idea, it's fine. I've got many more. The more ideas I come up with, the better I get at making ideas, the less I need this one idea. So, and quite honestly, if all you need is like a one sentence to copy me, then I don't really have anything of value anyway. So people who are closed-minded, who aren't willing to share, and I'm talking about sharing as in like open source and being open about their projects and what they're working on, they don't really fit into a makerspace. So don't try and accommodate them. Don't try and cater for them. If they are commercial entities and they want to use the space for a specific reason, you can build some basic protection in for them, but no NDA level stuff. It's at their own risk. So we're not going to intentionally publish this stuff, but we're also not going to guarantee that we're going to stand unprotected. If you want to be part of it, you can, but you're going to pay more because you're not adding that open source sharing back designs and everything back to the community. So you should pay a bit more to use the equipment. And then you'll find that wherever there's a commercial activity, those people will become, you want to partner with people who the makerspace becomes part of their business. It's something that helps them to innovate, helps them to create new products, and they keep it fresh, and they also keep coming back. People who are just doing it for a hobby, they generally get busy with something else, they can't pay the bills, and they don't come back again. So all the effort you put into building a community of hobbyists often doesn't bear fruit. So yeah, that's community. Tools I've talked about, and then just with ideas, I started on that. So encourage sharing, encourage an open source mindset, share media, publish everything you're doing, the events, publish what other people are doing, be willing to share, and then to wrap it all up is take pride in what you're doing. Okay, so the same way that you would take pride if you were making something with your hands, you as a craftsman, you need to take pride in this thing you're building that you're going to call a makerspace, and you need to do it well, and it's not easy. So, ask for help, always question yourself as to how you can do things better. Don't be quick to give up. Don't take things too personally. There is going to be times when you wonder why you've put all this effort into something and you're not getting anything back and no one appreciates you. But you're the only one to blame because you've built the thing. So, deal with the reality that, okay, maybe I didn't build this as well as I should have. Maybe I expected too much from this community. I gave too much. Those are my notes. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you on a tour of our makerspace, and then I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. Okay, so this is the entrance area. It's closed right now because we're using other entrance. This is the coffee area. That's our cappuccino machine. So we make coffee because of that two reasons, taste and smell. And it's a lovely way to welcome people and to serve them. Because if you make someone a coffee, you're doing an active service. Then here's sort of like our gallery area where we have some of the things that we make. And this is just to show people like the commercial opportunities. So how we commercialize our makerspace, how we subsidize it, is we run a signage type of business. And we do special projects, which we take on as and when we can. So here's a CNC lamp that we designed in one day and made for an event, which was fun. It's an IoT lamp, so it connects to the internet. Here's kind of like some signage stuff that we do. So that's cool. A lot of wedding decor stuff. So that's like our gallery type area. And then this is one of our offices, like most of the all the staff that work here in this office. That's one of our principles is just knock a hole in the wall. It's something we talk about because if you wait for everything to be perfect, you won't get anything done. So sometimes you just got to get a hammer and just smash your way through a wall and just deal with it. If people don't like it, or you can always build a wall at back. So some of the guys there doing some work. And then here's another hole in the wall. And here's some of our interns with the program we're running that we've got funded from Google, which took us 5 years basically to qualify for and a year to put together. And now we're in the middle of it, which is really exciting. Well, we actually just started this month. At the back, we've got all our electronic stuff stored there. There's boxes for everything, so flexible storage. We've got some 3D printers here. This is a vacuum infusion machine, which belongs in the composites lab, but we have it here because we were using it the other day. Here's a little batch of commercial things we're doing for a client. So you can see how everything overlaps, and you know, this is paying for some of this, and that's the way it has to be. So you've got to get funding one way or another, and for us, the easiest way was to create the funding ourselves by creating a business within the makerspace. If you can get someone to give you money, that's great. But remember, like Tech Shop, if the only way you know how to build a makerspace is by getting money. If the money stops, then your makerspace stops. We've figured out how to create revenue lines so we can kind of carry on whether we get funding or not. If we get funding, it just helps us scale. So you can see lots of different things happening. We're just busy building a machine for this weekend for an event that we've sold. Here's our little library with our books, remnants of the Maker Library network that we are part of, or we're part of. Just some more storage here. And one other thing about a makerspace, it's always in transition. So don't expect it to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. If you want something perfect, then makerspace is not what you want to do. Definitely not. Get as far away from makerspace as you can. Here's our laser room. So here's one of our newest tools. It's an acrylic bender, which we're excited about. Yeah, it's cool. And here, these guys are the workhorses of this makerspace. These guys have basically paid the rent for the last 5 years. So through the revenue we create on these machines, we've been able to pay the bills. Now, we're not excited about laser cutting. It's not a dream to wake up every morning and the laser business. But it is something that we have. It's an asset that we have. We're putting it to use as much as we can. And we've actually started 3 laser cutting companies out of this space. People they used this machine, they learned how to use it. They thought, wow, this is really cool. They started building a business. And one day they came to us and said, hey, I bought my own machine. I hope you're not upset. And we're like, no, we're not upset. That's great. Fantastic. You graduated and you've succeeded. We're happy. This is the powder 3D printer that we're trying to repair. This is a bigger 3D printer, more 3D printers, and a lot of other crap in the background. And I might lose you here with the internet, but here's our entrance from the road. And this is like also a sort of flexible event space. So if you walk into the makerspace, we normally have this door open. The idea will be to serve coffee through here. Here's some guys building a tool wall, which is cool. And there's some CNC machines. So we've got a bigger one that we made ourselves. We've got a little X carve and a little that's been loaned to us. And then here's some table saw, the plastic recycling machine, wooden lathe, and we've got some metalworking stuff right at the back to make knives, belt grinder, forge, and a 20-ton press, shop press, drill presses, and those sort of things. So all the dirty stuff happens out here. And then this is our storage room / composites lab / office. Again, we're in the process of moving everything around, so it does look chronic in here. Just warning. Yeah, so that's the little tour. I'd love Dan to send me a copy of this and see if I made any sense. Okay, so I think just to finish it off, if there's any questions, Now's the time.
Steve, hi everybody. Is it possible that maybe if you have a list of all the local makerspaces, maybe in South Africa, would share? I saw somebody from Afghanistan who was thinking I'll find also if there's makerspaces in Afghanistan, and we just share all that information in the group for everyone to sort of know what's the principle, who's where, and I'll speak to Mia also about our TNG makerspace here.
Okay, so just in terms of resources at the makerspace.co.za, that's our website, the makerspace, yeah. We've got we have a lot of information. So here's a list of all the makerspaces that we know of in South Africa with some links. So that's there on the website. I'll just copy that into the feed. Then we've also got some learning resources. So we've got our recommended reading. These are all books that have influenced us. Quite a good reading list, if I don't say so myself. So that's also interesting. And then we've also got link to software. Software for makers. Also on our website. So like a link of all different software. And links to download the software. So most of it is open source. Yeah, so it's software for makers. So let me close this. And then I'll put this in the feed here. How do I do that? Chat. Control V. Okay, there's makerspaces. And then here's the software. Okay, so, and then the other thing is our YouTube channel. We've got about 70 videos. Some of them are how-tos, some of them are just interesting videos we've made. So I'll send that link as well. Please subscribe there. We want to get up to 1,000 people so we can monetize, if you guys don't mind. And Make Media said that our channel was, what did they say? The quality of our content was exemplary or something. So they're international. They are like Maker magazine. So that's quite a good compliment. Cool. Any other questions? Nelson.
I'm good. I see Nelson and me in the makerspace. I don't know about them. Palisa, Bonolo, everybody's there. Everybody can speak for themselves. I'm good. Thanks.
Nelson. Mia. I don't know if they...
Yes.
Oh,
it's Tony Pani, it's not Nelson.
Oh, okay. I can't see. It's really small on my screen.
Oh.
I wanted to congratulate Nelson.
Nopanda is here as well.
Nopanda is this one.
Okay, I need a question from you guys. Price of admission.
What is the question? I don't know the question.
How many times have you tried this before you got it to work, Steve-O?
Well, I mean, I'm still trying. I still don't know if it's working. So you got to define what trying is and what working is. But we've been doing it for 6 years. So I did read the Lean Startup, which helped me to test some of the things like the events, see if people are willing to pay to make things. There's an appetite. But a lot of the things we assumed in the beginning, we could make this membership that would be sustainable, everybody would sign up. That's totally not true. So we realized the membership or the community is a lot smaller than we thought, but it's still well worth doing. And as you become more, what's the word? As you have a bigger impact, you attract more people. So you sort of grow when you should. You're probably not ready for it early on. But no, it isn't an easy thing to do. So I think people have to understand that. You need resources one way or another.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay.